Hey guys, this is Vashtra Reads, bringing you another story to listen to while you do what you do. Tonight's story, Hide and Seek, is brought to you by Demosis01. I found this story in the subreddit No Sleep. I think it's a good one, and I hope you wonderful people do as well. Well, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. A game we all played as children. Being raised in Alaska in the 80s meant a lot of outside adventures, even with a parent's watchful eye. It's not to say that we went entirely unsupervised, but in the dark, it is hard to see. I suspect many people think I grew up in an igloo and had huskies pull me to school in a sled, but that's hardly the case. We had paved roads and streetlights, running water, and on-point snow removal. I lived in a small subdivision and had two of my closest friends a few houses away. It happened one cold January. My friend Sarah and I were playing in the snow. We had feet of it. After all, it wasn't unusual to get up to 5 feet in a day. It had been dark for hours, and it was just about dinner time. Sarah was the only friend I had yet to find. All the others had gone home after I had stalked them through the snow. I was rather good at tracking, but of course the snow made it a lot easier. Even so, I still couldn't find her. I tried following all the set of boot tracks. I went around and around, behind her house, behind mine. I remember thinking, she wouldn't have gone into the woods, would she? Despite priding myself on being braver than the other girls, I still got a twinge of fear every time I looked towards them. My house had about 30 feet behind it before turning into wilderness. Since we got a lot of snow, it had been pushed up to make a huge snow hill. It was about as high as the roof, and so I climbed it. I convinced myself if I climbed to the top, I would be able to see more and maybe, just maybe, could spot her or her tracks. I was just about halfway when I glanced up. What I saw froze me in place. A set of intense yellow eyes. I couldn't make a sound, couldn't do anything, but couldn't look back into them either. It was too dark to see what it was, but it couldn't have been a person. Those weren't people eyes. They blinked and I moved. I tried to run, but it was more of a face-first fall down the hill. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran as fast as my snowsuit permitted until I was in the safety of my warm house. Good. I was just about to call you in for supper. I nodded at my mom. I didn't want to say anything about what I saw. I knew she would blame it on my overactive imagination. I took off my snowsuit and put my boots away to dry, but I couldn't get warm. As Mom finished cooking, I stayed sitting by the fireplace, attempting to get feeling back into my hands and face. After eating, showering, and going to bed, the cold remained. It was as if the core of my being had been frozen. I had been cold before plenty of times, but this was different. I had told myself Sarah had probably just went home. She was probably bored of the game. She usually opted not to play anyway, and so I went to sleep. The next morning, as I went to wait for the school bus, Sarah wasn't there. We usually always took the bus together. I looked across the streets. Her parents' van was gone. Oh, good. She must have had an early practice. Even though I told myself that, I still couldn't shake the gut feeling. Something was still wrong. I didn't relent when I went to school, and I didn't see her there either. After school, the bus dropped me off in front of my house. I went behind it, towards the hill, looking up on top of the snow hill, and the light seemed far less daunting. I gathered my courage and started to climb up. I got to the place where I had stopped the night before. A shiver of fear ran down my spine. I had to look, had to see what sort of prints remained. I forced myself up the rest of the way. The top was clean. No tracks, no nothing. It didn't make sense. I knew what I had seen. I looked around, still nothing. The light was starting to fade quickly, as it does in winter. From up here I could see Sarah's house. Still no van outside. I frowned. Had I really seen those eyes? Was it a trick of the light? In the fading light, I kept glancing around, looking for anything, though at this point I wasn't sure what. I looked into the forest, eyes trying to penetrate the growing darkness that seemed to emanate from them. That's when I saw something orange. It was familiar, so I slid down the hill toward it. I forced myself to the forest's edge and looked. It was Sarah, but there were no tracks, nothing that would have led me to her the previous night. Despite the choking sensation in my throat, I walked nearer. I knew I wasn't about to like what I found. The orange jacket was far too still, leaned up against that tree. She was huddled up, sitting with her knees drawn up and arms wrapped around them to keep herself warm as she waited. She was waiting for me to find her. "Sarah?" I called out to her as I didn't want to get closer. I didn't want to see what I knew to be true. With trembling lips and a pounding heart, I finally got close enough to see her face. Her eyes were wide in terror, as if she saw something truly petrifying. Frozen tears upon her pale face told me my worst fear. It also made me think of the eyes on top of the snow hill, of how I couldn't look away. I shivered again, immediately cold and unable to make a sound. The hairs on my neck started to stand, and the uncomfortable feeling of something watching me made me stiffen. I tried not to make a sound as I looked from side to side. My breath had caught in my throat and my eyes began to water. The world was quiet and getting very dark. Fear wanted me to stay put, but somehow I knew I must run or be frozen in place. I looked one more time upon Sarah's terrified face and ran. The sun was about to set, and I just knew whatever it was coming back. I sprinted as fast as I could through the knee-high snow. With every step I knew I was gaining on me. I could feel the cold sapping my energy, but I didn't stop. I fell down into my driveway and once again went running into my house. "Mary, my mother started, but her sentiment stopped as soon as she saw my face. "Mary, what's wrong?" She came over to me and immediately touched me. "You're freezing. What happened?" I couldn't voice what I had seen. I just shivered in her arms, cried, and pointed outside. I can't really remember what happened next. I knew the police came. They looked all over for Sarah, but there was never any trace of her. It wasn't just that they couldn't find her. There was absolutely nothing behind my house. Not her footprints, not her body, and definitely not my footprints. I tried to tell them multiple times, but my voice hasn't ever worked the same. I've stuttered ever since and can't ever get above much more than a whisper out. My mom had me in so many different kind of therapies, but nothing have worked. Well, at least not the stutter. I've since moved away and continued with routine therapy and antidepressants. I figured it couldn't hurt telling my story of that night so many years ago. Maybe it'll help me let it go, but it's doubtful. I just wanted to warn you. If you ever go to Alaska in the winter, don't linger in the dark and never ever play hide and go seek in the snow. I hope you enjoyed that one. I know I did. If you did too, please consider hitting that like button. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Feel free to drop a comment and I'll reply to as many as I can. If you would like to read the story, I will leave a link to it in the description below. If you have any stories that you would like me to narrate, please consider posting them in the subreddit I created just for you guys. r/Vashtra Reads. Until next time.